everyone, and welcome back to another video. I'm Charlotte and I'm fashion historian, and today I'm going to talk about something that I feel is very Christmassy. At least it is Christmassy to me. Me and my mother has this tradition that we usually watch Little Women, the 1994 version, just before Christmas, because it is such a Christmassy movie for me. And I have actually watched all of the different versions of Little Women, all the 4 movie versions that are like the speaking picture. So today I'm gonna talk about a Little Women, all of the different versions, and compare them and talk about the costumes and which I liked more and which I didn't. And obviously I read the original book by Louisa May Alcott. It's called Little Women, and if you haven't read the book, you probably should, because it's a really good one. So there are 4 movies today that I'm going to talk about. The first one is Little Women 1933, then there is Little Women 1949, and then there is Little Women 1994, and then there's the most recent version, 2019 version 1. There was also a miniseries that came out 2017, but I'm gonna skip that one because that one is a miniseries. And there was also a miniseries, I think, during the 80s. I haven't seen that version. I don't know even where to see it. So I'm going to skip the miniseries versions just because 4 films is already quite a lot of material for 1 film. The 1933 version of Little Women was the first talking picture adaptation of Little Women. Before that there was at least 1 or more versions, but they were black and white and silent films. The 1933 version is black and white film and is directed by George Cukor. The costumes are designed by Walter Plunkett. That name might ring some bells in your head. If it does, he was the costume designer in Gone with the Wind, and also Gone with the Wind is actually set during the same era as Little Women is, as both are set in American Revolution. The 1933 Little Women obviously came out before Gone with the Wind, but that means that he already had a little idea before Gone with the Wind of the dressing of the era. When comparing to 1933 Little Women to the Gone with the Wind, the skirts are much more realistic sized. In the Gone with the Wind they're obviously way too big. Even though in both films there are crinolines, but the crinolines that are seen in Little Women is much more accurate. And it is surprisingly accurate for the 1930s film, I think. The girl's age is shown with their hair and if it's up or down and how fitted the clothing are. Amy's and Beth's hair is down, what is signifying both of their young age. The 1949 version of Little Women was a first color picture of Little Women, and it was directed by Mervyn LeRoy. The costumes for this adaptation was made also by Walter Plunkett, so we have 2 different versions of Little Women from 2 different decades, and they have the same costume designer, which I think is very interesting because this is his chance to make the costumes a little bit different and correct all of his kind of like mistakes that he wanted to change. And it is kind of interesting, and also because this is the second time that he's doing the costumes for Little Women, he obviously knows the original material better, and he knows the era better because he has done other films that are set in the same era. So for overall costumes in 1949 version, for the beginning of the film, girls wear their hair down to symbolize their young age, again, similar in the last movie. Again, girls are wearing crinolines under their dresses, which is a little visible but not really that much. Amy's and Meg's dresses are very fitted in a contemporary way, contemporary to 1949. And they are not that accurate, I think. I think they're a little bit too fitted for the era. The fitting was a little bit different in the 1860s than in the late 1940s. And obviously, as this is the first color version, we have separate color palettes for each girls. So this is a thing that I'm gonna point up a lot in the other versions. Also, the script and the music is exactly the same. The script isn't exactly the same, but almost same from word to word than the last adaptation. So the first two adaptations that I'm talking about are very similar, as they had the same costume designer, they have the same script, they have the same music. It's very much almost watching the same film. Obviously, they have different actresses for the roles. Then we have iconic 1994 version of Little Women, and that one was directed by Gillian Armstrong. So we have a female director, which is great because Little Women is written by a woman and it is about women. So it is great that we have a female director as well. Also, the costumes are designed by a woman, Colleen Atwood, and she was nominated for an Oscar for this film. Colleen Atwood has previously worked with Winona Ryder in Edward Scissorhands, and most of us probably know some of her other films as well. The girls have often their hair down, but in official occasions their hair is up. If the girls are wearing crinolines, they are not as visible as in the two previous films. It is very clear, and it has been made a full plot point, that March girls don't wear corsets. It is brought up several times in the film. None of the girls has their own color palette for the film, and when the girls are poor, they wear dull colors, and it evolves from, as Little Women is kind of in two parts, because it was two different books. So in the first part, the girls are quite poor and they are children, so they don't have so they are much more just like little girls, and they don't have that much separate identities in their costumes in 1994 version. Then we have Little Women 2019, which came out last year, and that is directed by Greta Gerwig. We have another female director, yay! And the costumes were designed by Jacqueline Duran, who won an Academy Award for the costume design for this film. And as you may know, this got a lot of hate. There are several videos explaining why this film didn't deserve this Oscar, but I disagree. And I know why people disagree with me and with the Oscar committee is that because the costumes were so inaccurate, and they are much less accurate than in the 94 version. But let me explain. The costume plot in this film is immaculate. It's amazing how the storytelling is done with the costumes, and that is why I think it definitely deserved the Oscar. Because making historically accurate costumes is surprisingly easy when you think of it, but you have to have the creative mind to put on use how to explain the characters with the costumes and tell you more with the costume. The purpose of the costume is create an illusion of another era and another place that actually doesn't exist. Also, costumes can never be fully accurate because of the sewing techniques and fabrics, and simply because of the fact that we live in the 21st century and we don't live in the 19th century. So we just don't have all the information, and we can't transport back in time and make the costumes, because even though as we think that we could make as historically accurate costumes as we could, they still wouldn't. It just doesn't work like that. For me, it is more important that the costume is part of the costume plot, and it is telling the story and telling something new about the characters. That is my personal preference, because I love that. I think the films that the costume is part of the narrative, then you have succeeded in the costume design, in my opinion. You can disagree, it's fine. We can disagree. And also, if you know any of Jacqueline Durand's work, you know that she is not doing historically accurate costumes. The previous films that she has worked with is Pride and Prejudice 2005, also most recent version of Anna Karenina, and Beauty and the Beast. Is none of that accurate? No, they are not. You can still love the costume even though it's not accurate, and it is fine. It is fine, honestly. So for 2019, all of the sisters has their own color scheme to show their personalities, just like in the 49 version has. The colors are actually the same ones which are mentioned in the novel. As in the novel, it's not in any of the films, but in the novel they get these books from their mother for Christmas, and all of their books, the covers are different colored, and those cover colors are mentioned in the novel. So those are the colors that Jacqueline Durand has picked for each girl, and I think that is amazing little detail that probably no one has noticed before, because I haven't heard anyone talk about it yet. So I think that is great. Also, there isn't a change of silhouette in this film, and the costumes are looking much more like from 1850s to early 1860s, even though the second part of the film is set after the war. Also, this film uses flashbacks, so it's not narratively coherent as the other ones are, as the other ones follow more of the book plot for the novel of the plot. So that was the overall of all of the 4 films. Now I'm gonna talk about of each character in each film. Let's start with the oldest sister, which is Meg. In the 1933 version, Meg is played by Frances Dee. Meg usually has 2 big scenes in the films, which are the visit to the ball, where she's called Daisy and she wears the pink dress, and her wedding. In this version, she does only have the wedding, so Meg is a very small character in this one, and we even see her wedding dress just briefly. And there's not really much to say about Meg's costumes in this film, because it's black and white. I can't talk about the colors. They look good, but she's a smaller character than in the other ones. Then we have a 1949 version, where Meg is played by Janet Leigh. Meg wears a lot of blues, which is traditionally feminine color. If you don't know, pink became feminine color in the 1950s. So it was the same time as we got New Look, for example, and you can see effects of New Look in this film, like in the costumes, in the silhouette of the bodies. So Meg wears a lot of blues in this film, and that way we can think, oh, blue used to be the feminine color before it became pink in the 1950s. So that is symbolizing Meg's traditional values and traditional femininity that she is. So that's why we see Meg wearing a lot of blues. In 1994 version, Meg is played by Trini Alvarado. For the ball scene, Meg has made herself a blue dress, And then when she gets to the ball and her friend decides to borrow her pink dress, underneath the pink dress she's always corseted, and that's a big part of the plot because she doesn't use corsets because her mother says it's not good. In the film, Laurie's joking about how revealing this dress is and kind of shaming her for it, and that is quite novel accurate, except of the colors of the dress. In the novel, Meg wears a self-made white dress, and then she gets dressed up in a blue dress that her friend borrows to her. And this change has obviously been made because we think of pink of traditionally feminine color, but it actually isn't. During the Victorian era, blue was the more feminine color, so it makes more sense as in the novel she gets changed to the blue dress because the blue is the feminine color. But obviously there has been a switch because in the 1950s pink became feminine color, so that's why we see Meg in pink dress in this version. 1994 version, Meg's wedding dress is white. Obviously it's white in every version, but it's very fashionable in this version, and it actually says in the novel that she's not wearing a fashionable dress because they are poor, so that's a little bit a difference, but I don't personally mind it because everyone wants to look their best in the wedding day, and obviously the costume designer would be like, yes, let's put her in the most beautiful dress for the wedding, so it makes sense. In 2019 version, Meg is played by Emma Watson, and her color is green. That comes from the book cover that she gets, that is green. And green is color of rebirth and growth. And that is already telling us from the beginning of the film that Meg is going to be a mother and she's going to survive even from hard situations. Also in this film, Meg's ball dress is, she wears first a blue dress that he has changed to the pink one, very similarly as in the previous film version. So the next sister that we're going to talk about is Jo, everyone's favorite. And in the most of the versions, Jo is played by the most famous character because she's the main character of the film. In a 1933 version, Jo is played by Katharine Hepburn, and her dresses in this film are the most plain of the sisters because she doesn't care about fashion. And it's actually said in the novel that she doesn't care about fashion. When Jo meets Laurie in this film, she wears this like bolero with her dress. And that bolero is quite masculine and it is inspired by master outfits, and that is actually quite accurate. It was quite popular outfit to wear in the 1860s. There's a lot of photographs of women wearing this kind of outfit. And again, it is telling about her tomboyish and how she likes to do what men does. In this film, when Jo meets the professor, she starts wearing more feminine clothing, and her dresses even now got ruffles everywhere. So she becomes more feminine as she meets the love of her life. That makes sense again. In 1949 version, Jo is played by June Allison. As this is the color version, Jo wears a lot of earth tone colors, and it is shown how plainly she dresses. Red is used for accent color for Jo, and that is very similar as it does in the most recent version. Her costumes are most plain and they are not very fitted as the other sisters are, and it is shown how she's not the stylish sister. Jo starts wearing her hair up when she gets to New York City, but her costumes doesn't really change. In 1994 version, Jo is played by Fiona Ryder, and she's mainly wearing dark colors and grays. In this film, as the sisters don't have separate color palettes, it's very hard to say anything about the costumes, like the color-wise. She's not wearing crinoline, she's not wearing corset underneath. Her dresses are quite plain. there's one weird costume that she has. For the second Christmas, she wears this dress that looks like 1870s neckline, that it has an 1870s neckline, but underneath it has another shirt, and it's a little bit weird because this film has the most accurate costumes, so this one kind of stands out to me because it's not accurate, because it's not 1870s yet. At this point of the film, it's 1860s because it's during the American Civil War. Even when Joy gets to New York City, she still is wearing grey, and her style really doesn't change at this point, which is kind of a shame, but it's fine. In 2019 version, Jo is played by Saoirse Ronan. I have no idea how to pronounce her name. It's fine. So I'm sorry. And she wears a lot of earth tones, just like in the previous films. And again, red is used as an accent color. There's a lot of change when Jo gets to New York City. She starts wearing a lot more black and very masculine clothing. And some of her garments are clearly menswear, and it's mixed with women's wear, and there's even a scene where I can see her wearing trousers underneath her dress, and this all is emphasizing her masculinity and her desire to do what men can do. And I think this is a clever way to build up the character with the clothing. So I don't mind the inaccuracies in this point, because it's telling more about the character than the previous versions. Then we have the Darling Beth. In the 1933 version, she's played by Jean Parker. Beth wears a lot of knitwear in this one, and you usually wear knitwear when it's cold or you're cold. So this is telling about how she's often sick and is cold. So it is already shown in the beginning of the film that she's the sick one, which is sad. There is not much to say about Beth's clothing, really. She's probably the smallest character of all of them, which is sad because she's one of my favorites. In 1949 version, Amy's and Beth's ages are flipped, and Beth is played by Margaret O'Brien, and in this adaptation she's always the youngest one. She's shown a lot more younger than the other ones, and her wardrobe is very childlike. She has embroidered apron and she wears shorter skirts than her sisters. That is something that the two of the older films use really very much, showing the character's age is the length of their skirt. Beth is looking like a death itself in black after visiting the Hummels, and that is symbolizing her future death. And that scene is very striking scene because she's actually wearing black and she's so young, and yeah. In a 1994 version, Beth is played by Claire Danes. Again, her costume doesn't really have much personality. During the second Christmas, Beth wears Jo's old dress, the red one that she wore to the ball that she got scored. And I think that is a great example, usage of costumes, and it is showing how fabric was expensive at the time, and younger sisters obviously would wear their older sisters' clothing even though it wouldn't be fashionable, because fabric was so much more expensive than we can even think. It was more expensive to buy the fabric than get it made to a dress. So that tells you a lot. In the most recent version, Beth is played by Eliza Scanlon. Again, a hard name for me, so I'm sorry. And her color is purple. Purple is a color of mourning, and this is already indicating to us that she's gonna die, which is really sad. she's wearing purple for the whole movie, and purple is color of mourning, so they are telling us from the beginning. Also, Beth's hair is loose for the whole movie, which is showing her childlikeness, how she never gets to grow old. And yeah, her costumes in this one are really emphasizing that she's gonna die young. Last one of the four sisters is Amy. In the 1933 version, Amy is played by Joan Bennett. And for that film, she is the one who looks the most fashionable for her contemporary audience. Her hair is she's truly a 1930s beauty. You can see it from her makeup, from her hair. She looks like she doesn't belong in the film because the costumes are are somewhat accurate, and it looks she's just from another era. But that is symbolizing how she actually is the most fashionable and she cares the most about looking like the fashion ideal. So it looks kind of funny, but I'm fine with it. In this one, Amy wears loose aprons in the beginning of the film to hide her body, because obviously the actress is adult already, so that is to hide her body and make her look more like childlike. Also, her dresses are very short in the beginning of the movie to show her young age. In 1949 version, Amy is played by Elizabeth Taylor, and as Amy's and Beth's ages are swapped, she's not the youngest one in this one. Amy wears a lot of pinks, and in this point of the timeline, it's almost 1950s when pink became. This is beginning of pink becoming a more feminine color. So as Meg wears blues in this one, the traditional femininity, Amy wears pinks, which is new kind of femininity and fashionable. Again, Amy's hair is the most styled of all of them. And in the beginning, she's also wearing loose aprons to hide the actress' age. Again, Amy is seen in the end wearing a new silhouette, but this one doesn't have a bustle, and it is the least accurate dress of the film. In the first adaptation, she actually shows up in a bustle dress in the last scene, and in the both movies, Joe is commenting that, oh, and you even have a bustle or something like that. And in this version, the actual dress doesn't even have a bustle. Yeah. But it's a pretty dress, and it's a new silhouette, and it's showing how the fashion has changed, as they don't show as Amy in the Europe. Also, that is mentioned in the novel. It is mentioned that when Amy gets back, Meg is kind of jealous from her Parisian dress. In 1994, Amy is played by two actresses, first by Kirsten Dunst and then Samantha Mathis. And this is the only version where Amy's character has two different actors to show her age, and I think this is a good thing. As there is two different actors for Amy, her wardrobe doesn't really need to be as childlike. It is very childlike, but it doesn't look that much like different, like childlike, because the actress is actually child. When Amy's painting a cup, Amy's seen wearing Meg's old ball gown, the blue one. And this is again a great way to show that women didn't just throw their dresses away, even though they are not fashionable anymore. They would still wear those. And Amy's adapted a fashionable dress in Europe, probably because Aunt Marge probably paid for it. And she's wearing a bustle gown in those ones. So we can actually... But all the other characters still keeps wearing the old silhouette, even though Amy comes back. which I think is fine because it's said in the novel that Amy is the most fashionable one, and all the other ones were still wearing the old fashion when she gets back from Paris. In 2019 version, Amy is played by Florence Pugh. Who? No. Again, a hard name for me. I'm sorry. Her color in this film is baby blue. Her dresses reminds me of Cinderella, and she wears proper crinoline and corset underneath. And it is kind of a Cinderella story for her because she is living in poverty. Not poverty, but you know, they think it's poverty, so yeah. And then she gets to marry rich. So in a way it makes sense that she's dressed like Cinderella. This is also, in color wise, this is quite accurate. Because in the novel, Amy loves blue. So it makes sense that she's wearing blue. And during the 19th century, blue was considered as a feminine color. So that makes sense. Amy's hair is up during the whole film, or she has some kind of hairdo, even when she's a child. And I think this is because she wants to be mature. She wants to be older like her sisters are. And she can't wait to grow up. And there's this very interesting little bit where we can see Amy wearing stays. This is while she burns Joe's novel. And you can see the wings attached to her stays, which is showing that it's one of the costumes for one of the plays that they had. And yeah, there's a bit of a fashion history there because it clearly shows that they used old items of clothing from decades ago for material to their play. And that also shows that old gowns, old clothing, it was never just thrown away, it was always modified to the use to a new era. So this is a bit of interesting bit. Also in this film, she's wearing a blue dress when she meets Laurie in France, and that is straight from the novel. Again, it's accurate. So book-wise, 2019 is very accurate. Historically, it's not really. Conclusion. The 1994 version always has a special place in my heart, even though I do love 2019 version as well. And they are good in different ways. Like I said, I enjoy the historical accuracy of the 1994 version, but I also enjoy the costume plot and usage of color in the most new version. So they are both good in different ways. And I can appreciate both of them in different ways. Both of the older versions, the 1993 version and 1949 versions, are good. I don't have same kind of emotional bond to those films as I do to the two of the newer versions. And the costumes are beautiful in all of the films. But if I could rank them, I'd probably said I enjoyed the costumes in the most recent version the best. But you're gonna disagree, it's fine. Tell me in the comments below which version have you seen. First of all, have you seen all of the versions? And then which version had the best costumes in your opinion? It's fine to disagree. Also, go look at my Instagram, it's Period Corset. There is gonna be a lot of posts about this film. Probably some little details that I can't do in this video. There's gonna be those. And I hope you enjoyed my video. I'm so happy that you have even watched this far because my videos are quite long, probably too long.